Joining us now is another comedian, Jim Norton. He's joining us now via Skype, who was a friend of Robin Williams and who has a very interesting opinion piece today on Time.com titled, "Why the Funniest People Are Sometimes the Saddest." So Jim, we just heard the sheriff, the coroner there, tell us that Robin Williams likely died of asphyxia from hanging. What is your instant reaction to that?
Well, the more interesting thing to me was that they said that there was the cut marks too. And as somebody who's been depressed, and anybody who's been depressed in times knows that you're probably in a manic state and you're just thinking of anything to get you out of it. And then you realize that cutting is going to be a very painful way to do it. And almost being seated and hanging seems to be the most peaceful way, if that makes sense. And it also gives you a moment to get out of it if you want to. That's what I was struck by, the fact that he sat and that he had tried something else first. It's terrible.
Can you tell us how you first met Robin Williams at the beginning of your career?
I was about 8 years into comedy and performing at the Comedy Cellar, and they said that Robin was coming in. And as I mentioned in the article, comedians never want to act impressed with bigger comedians. We always try to act, nonplussed, and we just don't care. But we were all excited, and he came in and he did a set, and he was really sweet to all the comics. Robin didn't have to be nice. He could have went on and not asked anybody and not been courteous, and he would always make it a point to go up and talk to the guy he was going to bump and, hey, do you mind if I go on? Thank you so much. He was extremely humble, and he was like that with all comedians, no matter what level of the ladder you were on. He was just a really gentle guy.
Now, you said in your article on Time.com that you have personally known at least 8 comedians who have committed suicide. That's a lot of people to know in your life that have gone and ended their lives that way. So what is the correlation there?
Well, I think that, most comedians have something wrong with them. And I say that almost affectionately. We're either alcoholics or drug addicts or sex addicts. It's almost like, comics are always looking to escape. And that's why they become good at comedy, because, making people laugh is a great way to escape, and it's a great response to feeling sad. I always looked at being funny as a response to sadness. And so usually, like, Richard Pryor tried to set himself on fire, and who was funnier than he was? So it almost seems like in many cases, the funnier a person is, if you look behind them, the maybe the more sadder or sorrowful place that they came from. And I'm not saying that's always true, but I've noticed that in a lot of tremendously funny people is that they come from a very, very dark place, or when they're not being funny, they can slip into a very dark place.
So, Jim, given what you know about sometimes the correlation between very funny people and the struggles that they have in their lives behind the scenes that the rest of us aren't always aware of, were you surprised at all when you heard about the death of Robin Williams and the way that he died?
You're always surprised because, again, he's such a famous person. He's been famous, since I was 10 years old. So he's always been kind of a part of my, the culture. But as an alcoholic or an addict, you're never 100% shocked when somebody does that, just because being sober, you've seen so many people do it, and you know that nobody is beyond it. And that should tell anybody, who thinks that material possessions will save you. Robin had he was an iconic guy, and he was very loved, and he had money, and he had all the things that you think would make a person happy, but that just doesn't do it. It's not necessarily enough, if you don't kind of see it for yourself. So yeah, I was surprised, but the other part of me just knows that it's always possible when somebody is suffering with that.
So, Jim, what is it that you think that we as a society, we as family members and friends of comedians and others who are struggling with depression can possibly learn or take away from the death of Robin Williams?
I think it's harder for most people who aren't comedians, because at least we have an outlet. If you know people who are going through it, the only suggestion I can give, and it may seem trite, is to encourage them to get help. There's an old expression, if somebody is ready, you can't say anything wrong, and if they're not ready, you can't say anything right. So, you could only suggest that they go for help or try to do what you can. But, comedians have an outlet that a lot of other people don't. So the people in your life may be suffering silently and going to a job they hate, and they have no ability to vent. So, I would say just try to be supportive and help them. And I wish I had a more profound thing to say, but that really is all you can do.
And definitely some important advice there. Jim Norton, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.